Welcome back to Crime Unveiled. Tonight, we delve into the unsettling tale of the Axeman of New Orleans, a shadowy figure who terrorized the city during 1918 and 1919. The case remains shrouded in mystery, a chilling example of a seemingly random series of brutal attacks. We will explore the historical context, the known facts, the various theories surrounding the Axeman's identity, and the lingering questions that continue to fascinate and disturb. It's a story of fear, uncertainty, and a city gripped by the unknown. Join us as we carefully piece together the fragments of this dark chapter in American history. The Axeman's reign of terror began in the spring of 1918, a time when the world was already grappling with the horrors of World War I and the devastating Spanish flu pandemic. New Orleans, a city known for its vibrant culture and lively music scene, found itself plunged into an atmosphere of dread. The attacks typically occurred at night, with the Axeman targeting Italian-American grocers and their families. The method was consistently brutal. Forced entry, often through a back door or window, followed by an attack with an axe or hatchet belonging to the victims themselves. This added a layer of psychological terror, suggesting a disturbing level of familiarity with the victims' homes. The first documented attack occurred on May 23, 1918, against Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine. Both were attacked with an axe while they slept, and although severely injured, they miraculously survived. This initial attack set the stage for a series of similar incidents, each escalating the fear and paranoia gripping the city. The Axeman's choice of victims, primarily Italian-American grocers, led to speculation about potential motives, ranging from organized crime involvement to ethnic prejudice. However, the seemingly random nature of some attacks also muddied the waters, making it difficult to establish a clear pattern. As the attacks continued, the details became increasingly unsettling. The Axeman often left behind little evidence, adding to the mystique and difficulty in apprehending him. The lack of a clear motive further fueled public fear and speculation. Newspapers at the time played a significant role in shaping public perception of the Axeman, reporting on the attacks in vivid detail and often sensationalizing the events. This created a climate of intense anxiety, with residents taking extreme measures to protect themselves, from boarding up windows to staying indoors after dark. One of the most baffling aspects of the case is the lack of a consistent profile. While the majority of victims were Italian-American, there were attacks on individuals of other ethnicities, suggesting that the Axeman's motive might not have been solely based on prejudice. This inconsistency has led investigators and researchers over the years to explore various theories, from the possibility of multiple perpetrators to the idea that the Axeman was a mentally disturbed individual acting out a twisted fantasy. The lack of a definitive answer continues to fuel speculation even today. The Axeman's apparent ability to evade capture also added to the growing sense of panic. Despite increased police patrols and public vigilance, the attacks continued, seemingly without a discernible pattern or predictable timeframe. This created an atmosphere of helplessness and vulnerability, with residents feeling increasingly unsafe in their own homes. The very notion that an unseen assailant could strike at any moment, and with such brutality, gripped the city in a state of terror unlike anything experienced before or since. Adding to the complexity of the case is a bizarre letter published in local newspapers in March 1919, purportedly written by the Axeman himself. In this chilling communication, the writer claimed to be a demonic entity and promised to spare the lives of those who played jazz music in their homes on a specific night. This strange declaration led to a citywide jazz concert of sorts, with residents filling their homes with music in a desperate attempt to appease the supposed supernatural being. The incident highlighted the growing hysteria and the desperate measures people took to protect themselves. The Axeman's last known attack occurred in October 1919. After that, the attacks abruptly ceased, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The identity of the Axeman, his motives, and the reason for the sudden cessation of the attacks remain a mystery to this day. Various suspects were considered over the years, but none were ever definitively linked to the crimes. The case continues to fascinate and intrigue, a chilling reminder of a time when New Orleans was held captive by an unknown terror. Before the terror began, New Orleans in the early 1900s was a city brimming with life, a melting pot of cultures. Its streets pulsed with the rhythm of jazz, the aroma of Creole cuisine, and the vibrant energy of its diverse inhabitants. Imagine the French Quarter, a labyrinth of narrow streets lined with gas lamps casting flickering shadows, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, and the distant sound of riverboats churning the Mississippi. Daily life unfolded at a slower pace then, a time when neighbors knew each other, and front doors were often left unlocked. A sense of community permeated the air, a stark contrast to the fear that would soon grip the city. This was the backdrop against which the Axeman's reign of terror would begin, shattering the peace and plunging the city into an abyss of fear. The Italian-American community particularly had carved out a vibrant niche within the city. Many were recent immigrants, seeking new opportunities and a better life in America. They established themselves in various trades, opening grocery stores, barbershops, and restaurants. These establishments became cornerstones of their neighborhoods, places where families gathered, shared stories, and celebrated their heritage. They brought with them a strong sense of family and tradition, their homes filled with the comforting aromas of home-cooked meals and the sounds of Italian dialects. This close-knit community, built on hard work and shared dreams, would soon become the Axeman's primary target, leaving families shattered and the community paralyzed by fear. It is important to understand this context, this vibrant tapestry of life, to truly grasp the impact of the Axeman's crimes on the city of New Orleans. One such family were the Cortimiglias. They resided on Jefferson Avenue, in a modest two-story home with a small grocery store on the ground floor. Joseph and Rosie Cortimiglia, along with their two young children, Mary and Joseph Jr., represented the quintessential immigrant success story. They worked long hours, their days beginning before dawn and ending late into the evening, tending to the needs of their customers. The store was their livelihood, a testament to their hard work and dedication. The aroma of freshly baked bread and cured meats would waft out onto the street, drawing in customers and creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. On the evening of May 22, 1918, like countless other nights, the sounds of the Cortimiglia family settling in for the night would have been familiar to their neighbors. The soft murmur of conversation, perhaps the gentle clinking of dishes being washed, the creak of floorboards as they moved about their home. These ordinary sounds of domestic life, soon to be violently interrupted, offered no hint of the horror that awaited them. The windows, likely open to capture the cool night air, provided little protection against the intruder, who would soon shatter their peaceful existence. It's a chilling thought, this juxtaposition of ordinary life with impending doom. Think of New Orleans at that time. The city was largely illuminated by gas lamps, casting a warm, flickering glow on the streets. Electricity was still a relatively new technology, not yet widespread in residential areas. This limited visibility created long shadows, obscuring corners and alleyways, perfect for someone wishing to move undetected. The clip-clop of horse-drawn carriages on cobblestone streets and the distant strains of music from nearby saloons were the dominant sounds of the night, creating a sense of both vibrancy and vulnerability. The very atmosphere of the city, shrouded in a mix of light and shadow, played into the growing sense of unease. The Cortimiglias, like most of their neighbors, would have relied on simple locks and bolts for security. Elaborate alarm systems were unheard of in those days. People trusted in the close-knit nature of their community, the watchful eyes of neighbors providing a sense of collective security. This inherent trust, unfortunately, also made them vulnerable. The Axeman exploited this vulnerability, shattering the illusion of safety and turning the familiar streets into a landscape of fear. The thought of an intruder silently entering a home under the cover of darkness, unseen and unheard, sends shivers down the spine even today. The Cortimiglia family were known for their generosity and kindness, often extending credit to those struggling to make ends meet. Joseph Cortimiglia, a respected figure in the neighborhood, was known for his jovial nature and his booming laugh. Rosie, a devoted wife and mother, was the heart of their home, her warmth and gentle spirit, a comforting presence to all who knew her. They were the kind of family who embodied the American dream, hardworking, honest, and deeply rooted in their community. Their tragic fate served to amplify the fear and outrage that gripped the city. The children, Mary and Joseph Jr., were the picture of innocence, their laughter often echoing through the neighborhood as they played on the sidewalks and in the small courtyard behind their home. Mary, the elder sibling, was described as bright and inquisitive, while Joseph Jr., barely a toddler, was full of boundless energy. Their youthful exuberance, so full of life, makes the events that unfolded that night all the more tragic. The loss of these innocent lives struck a deep chord within the community, further fueling the desperate search for the perpetrator. It is a stark reminder of the senselessness of violence and the devastating impact it has on families and communities.
We left off discussing the eerie quiet that settled over New Orleans after the Axeman's supposed letter to the newspapers. Imagine the city, usually alive with the sounds of jazz spilling from open doorways, now hushed, every note tinged with fear. Families huddled together, doors bolted, windows locked. The vibrant streets, once bustling with life, became desolate pathways under the watchful eye of a nervous moon. The rhythm of the city, its very heartbeat, faltered. But amidst this pervasive fear, life, as it always does, attempted to find a way to continue. People still needed to work, to eat, to sleep, even under the shadow of the Axeman's threat. This uneasy truce between fear and normalcy is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this case. Precisely. It's that unnerving juxtaposition of the mundane against the macabre. People went about their daily routines, grocery shopping, attending church, yet with a heightened awareness, a constant looking over their shoulder. Imagine the weight of that fear, the subtle shift in the city's atmosphere. The laughter wasn't as loud, the music not as carefree. The city was holding its breath, waiting, and while the attacks seemed to have ceased, the fear they instilled continued to fester. The Axeman's silence was, in a way, more terrifying than his actions. It was a silence pregnant with anticipation, a silence that echoed in the empty streets and whispered in the hushed conversations behind closed doors. It created a climate of suspicion, where every stranger was a potential threat, every shadow a lurking figure. The newspapers played a significant role in shaping public perception during this time. They meticulously documented each attack, often with graphic details that fueled the public's fear. While they also published community announcements, notices of social gatherings, and the like, these everyday occurrences were now viewed through the lens of the Axeman's terror. A simple evening stroll, once a harmless pleasure, now carried an undercurrent of risk. Even seemingly mundane details, a broken window latch, an unfamiliar footprint in the garden, could trigger a wave of panic. The city was a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. And this climate of fear and suspicion inevitably led to speculation, rumors, and theories. The lack of a clear suspect allowed the Axeman's image to morph and distort in the public imagination. Some whispered he was a supernatural entity, a vengeful spirit preying on the unsuspecting. Others believed he was a deranged individual, driven by a twisted motive. The police, despite their efforts, were struggling to find any tangible leads. The lack of a clear pattern in the attacks further complicated the investigation, adding to the sense of randomness and unpredictability of the Axeman's actions. The city, it seemed, was at the mercy of an unseen, unknowable force. Let's consider the timeline again. The last known attack attributed to the Axeman occurred in October of 1919. Then, an unsettling silence descended. No more axe blows in the night, no more chilling letters delivered to the newspapers. This sudden cessation of violence is as baffling as the attacks themselves. Did the Axeman simply leave New Orleans? Was he apprehended for another crime and his identity as the Axeman never discovered? Or was he waiting, biding his time, allowing fear to take root and fester in the hearts of the city's inhabitants? These questions linger, unanswered, adding another layer of mystery to this already complex case. The absence of further attacks, however, didn't equate to an absence of fear. The shadow of the Axeman loomed large over the city. People continued to live in a state of heightened anxiety, their senses sharpened, their instincts primed for danger. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle of leaves outside the window, could be interpreted as a sign of the Axeman's return. The city's collective trauma had become a part of its identity. The period of quiet, rather than bringing relief, only amplified the sense of unease. The silence was a heavy blanket, suffocating the city, a constant reminder of the terror that had gripped it, and the potential for its return. The social landscape of New Orleans was irrevocably changed. The carefree spirit of the city, its vibrant music scene, its lively social gatherings, all were subtly altered. A sense of vulnerability permeated the air. The city's famed jazz music, once a symbol of its joyful exuberance, now seemed to carry a mournful undertone, a lament for the innocents lost. The Axeman's reign of terror, though seemingly over, had left an indelible mark on the city's soul, a scar that would take generations to heal. What we see emerging from this period is a city grappling with a collective trauma. The Axeman, whether a single individual or a figment of collective fear, became a symbol of the city's vulnerability. His actions exposed the fragility of life, the ease with which order could descend into chaos. The city, despite the return of a semblance of normalcy, remained haunted by the specter of the Axeman, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of everyday life. This underlying tension, this subtle disruption of the ordinary, is what makes this case so compelling, so enduring. We've laid the groundwork, establishing the socio-political climate of New Orleans in the early 1900s, a city brimming with a unique cultural blend, yet grappling with its share of social inequalities. Now, we delve into the chilling beginning of the Axeman's reign of terror. The first documented attack attributed to the Axeman occurred on May 23, 1918. The victims were Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine Maggio, Italian grocers residing on the corner of Lower Line and Magnolia Streets. They were discovered in their bed, both having suffered brutal blows to the head from an axe. Curiously, the assailant had gained entry by chiseling a panel from the back door, a detail that would become a recurring theme in subsequent attacks. The Maggio murders sent shockwaves through the city. The brutality of the attack was unprecedented, and the seemingly random nature of the crime left residents terrified. The police investigation was immediate, but hampered by the limited forensic technology of the time. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no apparent motive. The axe used in the attack belonged to Joseph Maggio himself. Further deepening the mystery, newspapers were quick to sensationalize the story, and the term Axeman began to appear, gripping the public imagination and stoking a climate of fear. The city became a breeding ground for speculation and rumors, adding to the already palpable anxiety. The Maggio murders were not just a double homicide. They were the genesis of a terrifying urban legend. What's particularly disturbing in the Maggio case, aside from the sheer brutality, is the apparent lack of a clear motive. Robbery seemed unlikely, as valuables were left untouched in the house. There was no evidence of forced entry beyond the chiseled panel, suggesting a degree of planning and familiarity with the victim's routine. This raised questions. Was this a crime of passion, a personal vendetta, or something far more sinister and random? The unanswered questions surrounding the Maggio murders contributed significantly to the growing public hysteria. The details surrounding the crime scene paint a grim picture. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were found lying in a pool of blood, their faces almost unrecognizable due to the force of the axe blows. The perpetrator had left the bloody axe at the scene, a chilling testament to the violence unleashed. The fact that the axe belonged to Joseph Maggio added a layer of psychological complexity to the crime. Did the Axeman deliberately choose the victim's own tool to heighten the sense of terror? Or was it merely a crime of opportunity? These questions continue to puzzle investigators and true crime enthusiasts to this day. The Maggio case established a pattern that would become tragically familiar in subsequent attacks attributed to the Axeman. The method of entry, the use of an axe, the seemingly random selection of victims. These elements became the hallmarks of the Axeman's terrifying signature. The initial investigation, however, yielded little in the way of concrete leads. The police were left grappling with a seemingly phantom assailant, a shadowy figure who struck in the dead of night and vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. The city of New Orleans was plunged into a state of panic following the Maggio murders. People began barricading their homes, fearing that they might be the next victims. The sense of security that had once existed was shattered. The Axeman had not only taken 2 lives, but had also stolen the city's peace of mind. Newspapers played a significant role in amplifying the fear, publishing lurid accounts of the murders, and speculating about the Axeman's motives and identity. This media frenzy undoubtedly contributed to the growing hysteria and shaped the public perception of the Axeman as a near-mythical figure of terror. It's important to remember the historical context here. World War I was raging in Europe, and the city was already on edge. The influenza pandemic was looming, adding another layer of anxiety and uncertainty. Into this volatile mix, the Axeman emerged, a figure who embodied the darkest fears of the time. The Maggio murders were not just a double homicide. They were a catalyst that unleashed a wave of terror and paranoia in a city already grappling with numerous anxieties. The Maggio case remains a pivotal point in the Axeman story. It was the first documented attack, the one that set the stage for the reign of terror that would grip New Orleans for the next 2 years. It established the modus operandi of the Axeman and introduced the city to a new kind of fear, a fear of the unknown, the unseen,
the seemingly unstoppable force that lurked in the shadows. The lack of a clear motive, coupled with the brutality of the crime, made it all the more terrifying. It was the beginning of a nightmare. The city descended into a palpable fear. The attacks, sporadic yet brutal, shattered any sense of security. Imagine New Orleans, a vibrant city of music and life, suddenly cloaked in a chilling dread. Every shadow seemed to harbor a potential threat. Residents bolted their doors and windows, reinforcing them with whatever they could find. The streets, once bustling with life, became eerily quiet, especially after dark. The Axeman's elusive nature only amplified the terror. There was no discernible pattern to his attacks, no clear motive, no specific demographic targeted. This randomness bred an even deeper sense of unease. Anyone could be next. This wasn't a targeted vendetta. It was seemingly indiscriminate violence, making every citizen a potential victim. The police were under immense pressure. The newspapers, fueled by public anxiety, demanded answers. Each new attack brought a fresh wave of criticism, highlighting the authorities' seeming inability to apprehend the perpetrator. The limited forensic techniques of the time further hampered the investigation. Fingerprinting was still in its nascent stages, and DNA analysis was decades away. Investigators relied heavily on eyewitness accounts, which were often conflicting and unreliable due to the darkness and the sheer terror of the attacks. The lack of a clear motive further complicated their efforts.
Were these robberies gone wrong? Acts of a deranged individual? Or something more sinister, perhaps ritualistic? The answers remained elusive, shrouded in the chilling mystery of the Axeman. The attacks weren't identical, which added another layer of complexity. While the axe was the consistent weapon of choice, the level of violence varied. Some victims were killed instantly, others were left severely injured. This inconsistency fueled speculation about the Axeman's state of mind. Was he becoming more brazen, more violent with each attack? Or were the varying degrees of injury simply a consequence of opportunity and circumstance? These unanswered questions haunted investigators and the public alike. The lack of a consistent modus operandi made it difficult to establish a definitive profile of the attacker, making the hunt all the more challenging. The city was on edge, waiting for the next blow to fall. The psychological impact on the city was profound. People began to suspect their neighbors, their friends, even their own family members. The fear was so pervasive that it eroded the fabric of trust within the community. Rumors and speculation ran rampant, further fueling the paranoias. Some whispered of a secret society, others of a supernatural entity. The lack of concrete information allowed these theories to flourish, taking root in the fertile ground of fear. Every creak of a floorboard, every shadow in the night, became a potential sign of the Axeman's presence. The city, once known for its vibrant nightlife, became a ghost town after sunset. Newspapers played a significant role in shaping public perception of the Axeman. Headlines screamed of the latest attacks, often sensationalizing the details and further stoking public fear. The press became a double-edged sword. While it kept the pressure on the authorities to find the perpetrator, it also contributed to the widespread panic. Journalists, eager for a scoop, often published unsubstantiated rumors and theories, adding to the confusion and anxiety. The Axeman became a media phenomenon, a shadowy figure lurking in the collective consciousness of the city. The constant coverage ensured that he remained at the forefront of everyone's minds, a constant reminder of the terror that gripped New Orleans. And then, there was the infamous letter, published in newspapers, purportedly from the Axeman himself. It promised to spare the lives of those who played jazz music in their homes on a specific night. This bizarre proclamation sent shockwaves through the city. Was it a genuine communication from the killer, a twisted taunt, or a hoax perpetrated by someone seeking to capitalize on the widespread fear? Regardless of its authenticity, the letter had a profound effect. On the designated night, jazz music filled the streets of New Orleans, a defiant act of collective resistance against the reign of terror. Homes were filled with music, a desperate attempt to ward off the Axeman's threat. The letter, regardless of its source, offered a strange glimpse into the mind of whoever wrote it. The demand for jazz music, a uniquely New Orleans art form, suggested a connection to the city, a perverse sense of ownership. It highlighted the psychological aspect of the crimes. This wasn't just about brute force. It was about control, about instilling fear and manipulating the behavior of an entire city. The Axeman, whether real or imagined, had become a puppet master, pulling the strings of fear and paranoia. The increased police presence, combined with the public's heightened vigilance, created an atmosphere of intense scrutiny. Every stranger was eyed with suspicion, every unusual sound reported to the authorities. The city was a powder keg, waiting for the next spark. While the jazz night passed without incident, the underlying tension remained. The Axeman's silence was, in a way, more terrifying than his attacks. It left the city in a state of perpetual suspense, wondering when and where he would strike again. The fear had become ingrained, a part of the city's very fabric. Let's delve deeper into the psychological profile of the Axeman. Assuming we are dealing with a single perpetrator, the brutality and seemingly random nature of the attacks suggest a deeply disturbed individual. The Axeman's preferred weapon, the axe, indicates a preference for close-quarters combat, suggesting a level of comfort with violence and a possible desire for direct confrontation with his victims. The methodical nature of the attacks, often involving forced entry and specific targeting of Italian-American grocers, further points towards a premeditated and possibly ritualistic element to the crimes. This could indicate an underlying obsession or delusion driving the Axeman's actions, possibly related to perceived slights or a twisted sense of justice. The Axeman's letter to the newspapers adds another layer of complexity to his psychological profile. While claiming to be a demon from hell, he also displayed a strange fascination with jazz music, promising to spare those households playing it on the night he designated. This contradiction between a demonic self-image and a demonstrable interest in human culture suggests a possible attempt at manipulating public perception. It is possible the Axeman enjoyed the terror he inspired and sought to amplify it through these pronouncements. Furthermore, the specificity of his demands regarding jazz music could indicate a more personal connection to the genre, perhaps hinting at an unexpected aspect of his identity. The choice of victims, predominantly Italian-American grocers, raises questions about potential underlying biases or personal grievances. Was the Axeman targeting this specific group due to a perceived rivalry, past negative experiences, or perhaps a distorted sense of retribution? Profiling suggests he likely lived in the vicinity of the attacks, possessing a familiarity with the neighborhood and the routines of his victims. The lack of forced entry in some cases suggests he may have been acquainted with some of the victims, further deepening the mystery of his motives. The fact that the attacks abruptly ceased adds to the enigma of the Axeman's personality. Several theories exist, ranging from his possible death or imprisonment for unrelated crimes to a sudden change in circumstances that neutralized his compulsion to kill. The absence of a definitive conclusion leaves us with a chilling portrait of a criminal mind seemingly capable of both extreme violence and a degree of calculated manipulation. The silence after the final attack is almost as unsettling as the attacks themselves. It's important to remember that despite the popular image of the Axeman as a deranged, possibly supernatural entity, we are most likely dealing with an individual driven by very human, albeit deeply disturbed, motivations. The absence of a confirmed identity and the passage of time have contributed to the mythologizing of the Axeman. However, separating the facts from the legend is crucial to understanding the true nature of this perplexing case. The Axeman's apparent awareness of the public's fear and his seeming attempts to play on it through his letter are particularly disturbing. This suggests not just a willingness to commit violence, but also a certain level of enjoyment derived from the terror he instilled. The letter, with its blend of demonic pronouncements and oddly specific instructions, offers a glimpse into the mind of someone who understood the power of fear and sought to wield it. This manipulation of public perception is a hallmark of many individuals who exhibit narcissistic or sociopathic tendencies. The lack of a clear motive continues to be a central obstacle in understanding the Axeman. While the focus on Italian-American grocers suggests a possible specific grievance, the seemingly random nature of some attacks contradicts this theory. This raises the question of whether the Axeman was driven by a broader sense of rage, a need for control, or perhaps a combination of factors that remain elusive even to this day. The mystery surrounding the motive continues to fuel speculation and adds to the enduring fascination with this case. The brutality of the attacks, coupled with the Axeman's apparent ability to evade capture, suggests a level of cunning and premeditation that goes beyond mere impulsive violence. The selection of the axe as a weapon, a tool associated with both manual labor and violent acts, further complicates our understanding of the perpetrator's psychology. Was the choice of weapons symbolically, or simply a matter of practicality? These unanswered questions add to the chilling legacy of the Axeman of New Orleans. Let's delve into the investigative process surrounding the Axeman. New Orleans police, understandably, were under immense pressure to catch this brutal killer. The city was gripped by fear, and every shadow seemed to harbor the Axeman. They followed up on numerous leads, some credible, others born out of panic and rumor. One significant challenge they faced was the lack of sophisticated forensic techniques available at the time. Fingerprinting was in its infancy, and DNA analysis was decades away. This limited their ability to definitively link a suspect to the crime scenes, relying heavily on eyewitness accounts which, as we know, can be unreliable. They investigated several individuals, some with criminal histories, others who fit the vague descriptions provided by some witnesses. But none of these leads panned out. The Axeman's taunting letters added another layer of complexity to the investigation. These letters, purportedly written by the Axeman himself, were published in local newspapers and sent directly to the police. They were filled with bizarre pronouncements, claims of supernatural powers, and threats of further violence. One letter, particularly chilling, stated that the Axeman would spare anyone listening to jazz music on a specific night. This led to jazz clubs being packed, homes filled with the sounds of jazz records, and a palpable sense of collective defiance against the killer. While these letters captivated the public, they also served as a distraction, diverting police resources and potentially clouding the investigation with misinformation. Were these letters genuinely from the Axeman, or were they a cruel hoax perpetrated by someone seeking attention or trying to throw the police off the scent? This question remained unanswered then and now. The investigation also experienced periods of what seemed like promising breakthroughs, only to be met with disappointment. There were arrests made based on circumstantial evidence or coerced confessions, but these individuals were later released due to lack of concrete proof. Each time a potential suspect emerged, hope flared up in the community, only to be extinguished as the investigation hit another dead end. This cycle of hope and despair further fueled the atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that permeated New Orleans during this period. The pressure on the police to deliver results must have been immense, and it's easy to see how, in such a climate, they might have been tempted to grasp at straws. The lack of a clear motive further hampered the investigation. Robbery didn't seem to be a factor in most of the attacks, and there was no discernible pattern connecting the victims, other than their Italian heritage in many cases. This lack of a clear motive made it difficult for investigators to develop a profile of the killer and to predict his next move. Was he driven by racial hatred, a twisted sense of justice, or something else entirely? The absence of a clear motive only deepened the mystery surrounding the Axeman and contributed to the sense of dread that hung over the city. One theory put forward at the time was that the Axeman was a member of the Mafia, or Black Hand, criminal organizations known for their brutal tactics. This theory gained traction due to the Italian heritage of many of the victims and the perceived similarities between the Axeman's methods and those employed by these organizations. However, no concrete evidence ever emerged to support this theory, and it remains speculation. The lack of clear evidence linking the attacks to organized crime left investigators without a defined path to follow. The Axeman case became a media sensation, with newspapers across the country reporting on the gruesome murders and the elusive killer. This widespread media attention brought its own set of challenges to the investigation. The constant speculation, often based on rumor and hearsay, likely interfered with the police's efforts to gather reliable information. The media frenzy also put enormous pressure on law enforcement to solve the case quickly, which may have led to hasty decisions and missed opportunities. The public's insatiable appetite for news about the Axeman transformed the case into a spectacle, hindering the very process that could have brought the killer to justice. Consider the context of the times. New Orleans in the early 20th century was a city of contrasts, a melting pot of cultures, and a hub of both prosperity and poverty. This social and economic landscape undoubtedly influenced the investigation. The city's diverse population and the presence of various criminal elements made it challenging for the police to narrow down their search. Furthermore, the limited resources available to law enforcement at the time, combined with the social prejudices that existed, likely hindered their ability to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation. Despite the extensive investigation, the Axeman of New Orleans was never identified or apprehended. The attacks abruptly ceased in late 1919, as mysteriously as they had begun. The case remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in American history, a testament to the limitations of law enforcement at the time and the enduring power of fear and uncertainty. The Axeman's reign of terror left an indelible mark on New Orleans, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of any city. The Axeman's reign of terror, even though it seemingly ended abruptly in 1919,
left an enduring scar on the psyche of New Orleans. Imagine living under the constant threat of a nocturnal intruder, someone who could break into your home and commit such brutal acts. This wasn't simply a matter of fearing burglary or theft. It was the fear of a violent, unpredictable attack, a fear that permeated the very fabric of daily life. Families bolted their doors and windows, reinforcing them with whatever materials they could find.
Sleep became a luxury for many, punctuated by anxiety and hypervigilance. The sense of security, of being safe within one's own home, was shattered.
Absolutely. The psychological impact of these attacks went far beyond the immediate victims and their families. The entire community lived in a state of heightened fear. And this fear manifested in various ways. Newspaper reports from the time detail a significant rise in gun sales, as citizens sought to protect themselves and their loved ones. Neighborhood watch groups formed, patrolling the streets at night, listening for any unusual sounds. The social fabric of the city began to fray as suspicion and mistrust grew. People were wary of strangers, and even neighbors eyed each other with a degree of apprehension. The Axeman, through his actions, had not only taken lives but also eroded the sense of community and trust.
The trauma experienced by the victims' families was, of course, immeasurable.
Losing a loved one in such a violent and unexpected manner leaves wounds that may never fully heal. Beyond the grief and sorrow, there was the added burden of unanswered questions. Who was this Axeman? Why did he target these specific individuals? The lack of a clear motive and the absence of an arrest only amplified the family's pain and frustration. They were left to grapple with not only the loss of their loved ones, but also the unsettling reality that the perpetrator remained at large, potentially still lurking in the shadows. And this uncertainty, this lingering fear, continued to haunt the city long after the attacks ceased. Even decades later, the Axeman remained a chilling figure in local folklore, a boogeyman whispered about in hushed tones. The stories, passed down through generations, served as a constant reminder of that dark chapter in New Orleans history. The city had, in a sense, developed a collective trauma, a shared experience of fear and vulnerability that became ingrained in its cultural memory. The Axeman's legacy extended beyond the physical violence he inflicted. It left an indelible mark on the city's psychological landscape. It's also worth noting that the attacks occurred during a time of significant social and political upheaval. The world was still reeling from the First World War, and the Spanish flu pandemic was sweeping across the globe. These events created a backdrop of anxiety and uncertainty, and the Axeman's crimes only exacerbated this pre-existing sense of unease. The city was already grappling with widespread loss and fear, and the Axeman's attacks added another layer of trauma to an already vulnerable population.
Precisely. The context in which these crimes occurred is crucial to understanding their impact. The war, the pandemic, and the Axeman's reign of terror created a perfect storm of fear and paranoia. People were already on edge, struggling to cope with unprecedented challenges, and the Axeman's actions pushed many to their breaking point. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that the city was able to eventually recover and rebuild. But the scars of that era undoubtedly remained. The Axeman case remains a chilling reminder of the power of fear and the lasting impact of unsolved crimes on individuals and communities. While the physical wounds may heal, the psychological scars can linger for generations, shaping the narratives and anxieties of a city. The silence surrounding the Axeman's identity and motives only deepens the mystery and ensures that his story continues to resonate with a sense of unease and morbid fascination. The Axeman's story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of community resilience and the long-term psychological consequences of trauma. It's a story that continues to fascinate and horrify, prompting us to examine not only the nature of violence, but also the enduring impact it has on the human psyche and the social fabric of a community. The unanswered questions surrounding the case only serve to amplify its chilling effect, ensuring that the Axeman's legacy of fear remains a haunting reminder of a dark chapter in New Orleans history. The strange lull following the Axeman's letter created a palpable tension in New Orleans. While attacks ceased, the underlying fear remained, a chilling reminder of the city's vulnerability. Detectives continued their investigation, sifting through countless leads, most of which proved to be dead ends. The pressure to find the perpetrator mounted as the public grew increasingly restless. The Axeman's ability to seemingly vanish into thin air added another layer of complexity to the case, fueling speculation that he possessed an intimate knowledge of the city's layout, possibly using hidden passages or abandoned buildings to evade capture. The lack of a clear motive further hampered the investigation,
leaving authorities grappling with a seemingly random pattern of violence.
The investigation took a significant turn with the discovery of a connection between the Axeman and Joseph Mumfree, a local grocer. Mumfree had been shot and killed by his wife, Esther Albano, in December 1918. Albano claimed self-defense, stating that Mumfree had threatened her with a pistol. However, detectives discovered a cryptic note left by Mumfree, mentioning the Axeman and suggesting some level of association. While the exact nature of their relationship remains unclear, this discovery provided a potential lead that investigators were eager to pursue. The note suggested that Mumfree may have known the Axeman's identity, or at least had information pertaining to his activities. Further investigation into Mumfree's associates led authorities to a man named Joseph Maggio. Maggio was a known criminal with a history of violence and extortion. Detectives discovered that Maggio had been extorting money from Italian grocers in the city, a practice Mumfree had reportedly refused to participate in. This refusal, coupled with the cryptic note mentioning the Axeman, painted a picture of a possible motive for Mumfree's murder. The theory emerged that Maggio may have been connected to, or even been, the Axeman himself, using the guise of the mysterious figure to intimidate and control the local Italian community.
Strengthening the suspicion surrounding Maggio was the testimony of a witness who claimed to have seen him near the scene of one of the Axeman's attacks. While the witness could not definitively identify Maggio as the attacker, the sighting placed him in the vicinity during the time frame of the crime. This, combined with his criminal history and connection to Mumfree, made him a prime suspect. Investigators began to scrutinize Maggio's movements and associates, hoping to uncover further evidence linking him to the Axeman attacks. A breakthrough came when detectives uncovered a pattern in the Axeman's attacks. Several of the victims were Italian grocers, or associated with Italian grocery businesses. This pattern suggested a targeted campaign, possibly motivated by extortion or revenge within the Italian community. Maggio's known involvement in extortion from Italian grocers solidified his position as the prime suspect. The attacks appeared to be strategically aimed at individuals who resisted his extortion attempts, creating a climate of fear and compliance within the community. While circumstantial, the evidence against Maggio continued to mount. Detectives learned that Maggio had access to an axe similar to the one used in the attacks, further solidifying their suspicion. The lack of any further Axeman attacks after Maggio's arrest added another piece to the puzzle. Although it remained circumstantial, the absence of attacks could be attributed to Maggio's incarceration, suggesting a direct link between him and the Axeman's reign of terror. This correlation became a key factor in the case against him. The lack of concrete physical evidence linking Maggio directly to the attacks presented a challenge for the prosecution. Despite the circumstantial evidence, the absence of DNA, fingerprints, or a definitive weapon prevented a conclusive case. The investigation relied heavily on witness testimonies, the pattern of the attacks, and Maggio's connection to Mumfree. The prosecution argued that the totality of the circumstantial evidence pointed convincingly towards Maggio as the Axeman. Despite the lack of direct evidence, the mounting circumstantial evidence led to Maggio's arrest. He was never formally charged with the Axeman murders, but was instead imprisoned for previous, unrelated crimes. With Maggio behind bars, the Axeman attacks ceased. While the case remains officially unsolved, the chilling silence that descended upon New Orleans after Maggio's imprisonment has led many to believe he was indeed the elusive Axeman. It's unsettling, isn't it, to consider that the Axeman may have simply blended back into the city's vibrant tapestry. After that final, chilling letter, the attacks ceased. No definitive suspect was ever identified. No conclusive arrests were ever made. The Axeman seemingly vanished as mysteriously as he appeared, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. We've examined the known facts, the theories, the potential suspects, and the socio-cultural landscape of New Orleans in 1919, a city grappling with war's aftermath, social anxieties, and a unique cultural blend. Yet, the Axeman's identity remains shrouded in mystery, a phantom terrorizing a city under the cloak of darkness. Precisely. And that, perhaps, is the most disturbing aspect of this case. The Axeman's ability to operate undetected within a community, seemingly an ordinary citizen by day and a ruthless killer by night, speaks to the chilling reality of evil lurking in plain sight. We often search for monsters in the shadows, in the fringes of society. Yet the Axeman's case reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who walk among us, masked by the normalcy of everyday life. The fear he instilled wasn't merely about the physical violence, but also the unsettling realization that anyone, perhaps even someone you knew, could be capable of such horrific acts. The Axeman's choice of victims, adds another layer of complexity to this chilling narrative. While initially targeting Italian grocers, his later attacks seemed less discriminatory, encompassing various ethnicities and social classes. This seemingly random pattern of violence further amplified the city's collective fear, making everyone a potential target. The lack of a clear motive beyond the chilling pronouncements in his letters makes it even more difficult to understand the psychology of the killer and the driving force behind these brutal acts. The letters themselves offer a glimpse into a disturbed mind, a blend of arrogance, a strange sense of humor, and a morbid fascination with music. The demand for jazz music to be played loudly on the night he promised to spare lives is a detail that continues to baffle. Was it a genuine preference, a cruel taunt, or a strategic distraction? The letters, while providing some insights, ultimately deepen the mystery, offering more questions than answers, fueling the legend of the Axeman. The context of the time, 1918 and 1919, is crucial to understanding the atmosphere surrounding these attacks. The world was still recovering from the First World War, a period of immense social and political upheaval. New Orleans, with its rich cultural heritage and history of violence, provided a unique backdrop to the Axeman's reign of terror. The city's anxieties, coupled with the widespread fear of the unknown assailant, created a climate of pervasive dread. The Axeman's story continues to fascinate and horrify precisely because it remains unsolved. The lack of closure, the absence of a definitive answer, allows the legend to persist, taking on a life of its own in the city's folklore. The unanswered questions continue to haunt us. Who was the Axeman? What motivated his brutal attacks? And how did he manage to vanish without a trace? The case serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life, the darkness that can reside within seemingly ordinary individuals, and the enduring power of unanswered questions. It leaves us with a lingering unease, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. And it begs the question, could such a figure exist today, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to emerge from the shadows? The thought is unsettling, a chilling echo of a dark chapter in New Orleans history. Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant. Goodbye.